And welcome to our live Q&A session with Daniel Walsing from Burnie High School, who's talking to us about his virtual and online cross-country that happened this year. Daniel, thanks for your time and being with us today.
No worries, thank you for having me.
Mate, if you can just give us a bit of an introduction, first of all, and a chat about what you actually did this year in the heat of the learning from home and COVID pandemic as that rolled out, and then we can have a bit of a chat about what that means for the future.
Yeah, so I guess given the circumstances earlier on the year and at the peak of the pandemic, we were just preparing to head into our cross-country phase and leading up to our cross-country carnival when sort of the worst of the coronavirus hit. So that prompted, I guess, Kate initiated, who's the head of HPE at Burnie High, initiated the conversation around, well, what else are we going to do to get kids moving still and to keep them involved, and especially in some really challenging times. We thought it was really important for them to continue to exercise and get fresh air and socialise where possible. So that basically led to him proposing an idea of where we thought virtual cross-country could go. The end result there was a lot of discussion around how and whether we thought it would work, whether we put all the effort in and get 10 kids engage in it, but we had a real crack at trying to make it simple, set it up through Strava, just an online, I guess, running app or exercise app, and basically spelled it out for all the students with how we're going to go about it. This is the time frame we're going to do it in, which was over a period of 5 days, with the basic aim of achieving as many kilometres as you can, running, walking, however that works out for yourself and your own ability, and then pumped it up a bit with making it more of a house challenge within the school. The staff got involved, and I guess certainly by the end of the 5 days, it really opened our eyes to the fact that it has a place, I think, as maybe it might be a one-off for the year, but certainly we feel that it could be successful again next year in a normal year. And as I have previously mentioned, that may be a lead up to our cross-country carnival, but we certainly feel like some kids excelled being away from school and exercising, again in very unique circumstances, but the social side of it was really amazing and important, or just as important as the exercise itself.
Yes, I guess that was going to be one of my questions. Like, in terms of surprise packets and that sort of stuff, did you have some kids who might not normally be engaged in that much physical activity at school, or some of those kids in your health and PE classes that are a bit harder to engage with some of the staff? Did you see any form of increase in their engagement or engagement across the board with those types of students?
Yeah, certainly. From the kids that were at home, there was around 250 sign up on Strava. Now, not every one of them went in and put 30 or 40 or 50 kilometres down for the 5 days, but to at least sign up showed a sign of that they were keen and wanted to participate. But a vast majority did do a really good job with continuous kilometres. And there was certainly names on that 5 days prior or a week or two prior, you would not have picked as clocking up 10 or 15 Ks over the 5 days, whether it be walking or running. Absolutely 100%. There was kids there that I wouldn't have picked. And as for the ones that were at school, they were amazing. So we started with maybe 60 kids at the start of the corona pandemic crisis. At this point, I think we had around 80 to 100 at school, and they were doing a lot of running, PE, health, options classes, recess, lunch times, and then you'd see some of them out after school as well. And they just kept going, and there were certainly students in that group that I would not have picked to just continually back it up. They might come in for a PE lesson and go, yep, this is what we're doing today, we're going to run, but to continue to back it up. And I think they really enjoyed, even the ones that were walking, just being able to walk in a small group their only opportunity to catch up with their friends, and then they could chat and just talk about how things were, and which was, as we all know, really important as well.
Do you know if there's been much of a continued impact from any of those kids? Like, are their kids still using Strava now? Are their kids out there at this time of year getting back into it with some nicer weather? Has it translated into that kind of, I'm not going to say lifelong, but that year-long fitness endeavour that perhaps it hadn't been for some of those kids in the past?
Tough question. I certainly know a lot of the keen runners are on Strava and putting down regular kilometres. As for the ones that maybe you wouldn't normally expect or that would continue with it or participate, I think there's an element of it, but I'm not sure it's continued all year. Certainly post the virtual cross country, there's still a lot of talk about it. And at this point, all the kids had friended each other on Strava, so they started to have access to what other people were doing, the kilometres they were running, where they were running with the maps. So I guess they had a lot more of a view of other students and what they were doing, which was encouraging for some of them. But I couldn't sit here and say that, 7 or 8 months on, I'm not 100% sure if there's still a huge amount of kids out there running as a result of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really cool too, because I guess, what you can learn from the process is that when the kids have that goal, or they have the online cross country, or they have that short-term target, using a platform like Strava has the ability to engage those kids. And I think, in terms of learning and how we apply that moving forward into a face-to-face program or a lead into cross country next year, I think that still has a really neat application. So I think there's still a lot of positive in the stuff that you're talking about. I guess thinking about, your program for next year, what does it mean for you? Is it something that you're looking to replicate and do again? What have you learned? Would you do anything differently? How does 2021 set up?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before, potentially looking at it as a lead up to the cross country. Obviously, things are really busy at the moment, so we haven't had, there's not a lot of dialogue around that just yet, and we usually have cross country in term 2. But certainly that's been floated that it might just be the hook that a few kids need prior to our cross country that prefer to virtually do it, because some kids would, or go and walk and get put down kilometres that way. So that's probably where that's at for next year at this stage. We feel like if we could get the same sort of engagement, it would probably really help promote our cross-country carnival as well, because it might flow into that. We may have a week off in between, because I can guarantee there was a lot of sore bodies after 5 days continuous running, me included. So a week off maybe in between, but we just feel like that momentum could carry into our cross-country carnival. And if you get an extra 20 or 30 kids have a real crack as a result, well, that's a win. And as for what we've learnt, I guess we've learnt that it can be successful, because we certainly had our doubts. I was probably questioning whether we'd get 50 kids engaged at the start. I just didn't know if the virtual platform was going to go off. So it's proven that it can work. Again, in very unique circumstances, I know, but we feel like that would certainly carry on next year. There was a few minor improvements, I guess, we could make around how the kilometres are recorded. So we tried to be really clear with that to start with, and try and block any loopholes, I guess, that kids could maybe expose, and that worked really well. And for the best part, every kid was really fantastic. But what we did find was just some manual entries, which was the entries for students that weren't able to access technology or internet. They basically had to manually log their kilometres through their house coordinator. And I feel like we could probably do that better next year with maybe just logging an actual route with where they went, or from a start point to a finish point, or maybe actually include all the streets they've run through, which is pretty easily done through Google Maps if they can access them, or at least explain it to the house coordinator. So it's not just as simple as going, yeah, I ran in West Park Grove last night and I clocked up 12.2 kilometres, which is what we started to see a really, really tiny amount of just towards the end. So I feel like we were clear to start with, but just making that a little bit more detailed would be beneficial going forward, I think.
Was there any thought, Dan? Obviously, this was a very positive thing for the school. Do you reckon the school would ever sort of find the money to get like a school subscription to Strava? Because I'm guessing most of your students would have just used the free option. Is there any way to sort of take it forward that way?
It's probably not been discussed that way, Vaughan. It certainly was. We promoted the free side of Strava. You can obviously purchase, I don't know how much it was annually. I wouldn't imagine it's huge, but obviously we're not going to burden every student with that cost. And the free side of it is limited. But yeah, that I'm sure if there was enough evidence around the benefit of it, the school would probably have a look at it. We could certainly propose that, and I guess then for students that don't have access, that might help, whether it's through a school device they may be able to borrow, or if we're at school it probably wouldn't be as hard to get on technology for some of them because they can still come and log results that way. But yeah, certainly an option going forward.
I know a few of the boys from athletics were quite banged up after the 5 days because they obviously do the sport, so they still wanted to win and did 100 Ks when they almost weren't ready for it. How did you go about, I guess, educating the students in regards to recovery?
So that come on us. We didn't anticipate people running 100 kilometres. So and most of, to be fair, most of the ones, there must have been 5 or 6 students that put down 100 or close to. Most of them were keen runners who already have a really sound knowledge of looking after their bodies and recovery. We just promoted, water consumption, make sure we were eating the right foods, all the normal things, getting enough sleep because we were fatigued by the end of the day. And some of them were still going out and going to training or, as you mentioned, athletics clubs. And for those that maybe weren't as aware of how to look after their bodies, then it was just about promoting, those few things I've mentioned there. And certainly come the Friday afternoon, we encourage everyone to have a weekend off, not to go and continue to try and push themselves, have a weekend off, just really give your body a time to recover, because for a lot of people it went from 0 to psycho, basically, in the terms of running, and definitely feeling it. Yeah.
Burnie's always been a powerhouse at the Inter-High Cross Country Carnival, and you won again this year. Did you find that it boosted the depth probably after the 6th to 15th runner? It was more competitive to make the team, more so than it's always the same guys and girls that are making those representative teams? Yeah,
I think it did. Obviously, we know there's some really great runners at Burnie High, and you'd expect them to perform well, and they did. There was one probably circumstance around that I'd come in a high day on cross country. One of the grades, for various reasons, had, I think, the top 3 runners not run, which was very unplanned at that point. We had reserves teed up. The reserves come along, and I think the reserves, I couldn't give you exact figures, but it shows the depth, and as you mentioned, maybe some unexpected runners to perform well. The 3 that went and ran in place of the initial 3 finished in the top 15 at Inter-High. And that wasn't even our 3 best runners based on the results from the cross-country carnival. So I think it did have an impact on maybe some other students, and certainly opened our eyes to the depth might go a little bit further than we initially even thought.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll jump in here. Daniel, I loved the video that the kids put together to promote this. Can you just talk a little bit about, I guess, how the kids did that, how you then communicated that with the other kids and sort of the time investment in that?
Yeah, so it certainly, we could drum on about the virtual cross country as teachers and I guess leadership within the team at school, but we all know that the kids probably have the most impact on each other when it comes to something like that. So 100% Kira, that worked. I think it really pumped a lot up. So how that was done was the house leaders of each house were asked to put together a short clip just around basically pumping up the virtual cross country, obviously within a house spirit, and just really trying to put out there what the kids might want to see. So at this point in Corona, all of them were at home. I don't think there was a house leader at school at that point. So they've managed to communicate with each other when there was no contact allowed, or virtually, to the point where they filmed. And obviously then they sort of, some of them did work together on that, but put the videos together individually as in a house. Then we mashed them together as one big video, which I believe was put on YouTube. And then the link was sent out to every student and staff member in the school via email and encouraged to get on there. And the kids really took to that, as in the actual house leaders themselves. There wasn't a lot of guidance around it. You know, we spoke about doing the right things for the cross country and make it lighthearted and entertaining, and I think they really did that. So you saw the end result, and it was really good. Some of them, I might admit, Blythe were better than others, but it was a really good result, and I think the kids were evidence, the actual students running evidence of that.
Yeah, the videos were great. I couldn't stop smiling through the whole thing. And I think to build on that next year, if you're going to keep it in place, maybe even some kids who their experiences from this year that are still at the school, adding those in or something might add to that. But yeah, definitely the kids driving it. I love that idea behind it.
Yeah, it was really effective. And if we go again next year with something like that, then maybe it might be me running around with bandages all over my legs and body, and Mr. Monday as well, and Abby Pennington, all of us pretty banged up. Yeah.
Right.
I'm guessing by that silence, no one else has got any more questions for Daniel. So, Matt, I think first of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to congratulate you on you and the team on being brave enough to try something like this. I think, and thinking back to that time, things were pretty hectic, and everyone was scrambling to work out what is it that we can put together and engage some kids in some physical activity when they're locked up in their homes, and that sort of stuff. So what you're able to come up with is really cool. And I guess the futuristic side of me is thinking, it's probably an incredible opportunity for people to think about how they can bed things into their programs, like Az was talking about, whether it's about fitness plans and recovery, whether it's looking at increasing physical fitness and that sort of thing. I think, using something like Strava and a tool online is a really cool way to increase that engagement and almost increase the time available for kids to access physical activity outside of the school day. So well done on getting the ball rolling, and I look forward to what you guys and some other schools around the place can set up and get in as part of their programs going forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'd certainly encourage other schools to have a go at it. Once it sort of got set up and we made it really clear to the students what was required, as I said, they were fantastic, and they're really savvy on technology, so they're not afraid to jump on Strava and set themselves up an account and do what they need to do. And I'd also probably just like to add, I probably from sitting here in the room, I can't do it justice with the feeling at the end of that week and the atmosphere by that point, as we had a really tight race between the houses. So it built up by the Thursday to be that's all everyone was talking about was the Friday, and we're looking towards the big runners and getting all of the grade that was at school out at lunchtime. If we walk at this pace, we can get 3 kilometres in 40 minutes at lunch, and culminated in that Friday, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I mentioned it previously, something like 2,000 kilometres was run or walked on that last Friday. And as we reflect on that now, I was only speaking about this the other day, it was just amazing to be driving home from school or around town. Not that there was too much of that going on, but within the community, and just seeing groups of kids walking around, talking in such circumstances that we're in. Like I said, I can't do it justice sitting here. It was just an amazing experience to see that happen, because we'd never seen it like that. You'd go past 5 or 6 groups of kids, or it's individual kids that you recognise that were out running, and so it certainly had an effect there on them, and made us really proud that we were able to achieve something.
Did you find the engagement was consistent across grades, or did it vary, and why do you think that might have been?
Yeah, all grades.
Yep.
If you had have asked me that prior to, I certainly wouldn't have said that I thought all grades would have bought in like they did, but every student at school and across the grades who weren't at school were equally as involved. There was no pattern of a particular grade. And even the grade 7s, they'd only been there a term before things blew up, I suppose, if that. Some were already out of the school by that point. So for them to then have enough courage to have a go and participate with the big kids, yeah, it was really, really effective.
And was that the same with like the non-HPE staff? Like, I'm thinking back to my high school, we had like some very passionate staff members in different houses, and they often weren't the actual HPE teacher. It might have been someone with a big personality. So how did the sort of non-HPE staff get involved?
Yeah, they were great. They were really awesome as well. I suppose you look towards, as you say, Vaughan, the non-HPE that maybe traditionally wouldn't jump on board something like this. We asked them to get involved, and they responded in force. And they were out at lunch times. We were walking laps with all the teachers in your grade. There was a few sneaky tactics going on between teachers. I know I offered up Zooper Doopers one day to my guys that came out, and they were amazing. And I know a lot of the teachers would put in their own work out of school as well, whether it be walking or running a few kilometres. They were a really big part of it, and certainly anyone thinking of doing the same thing would be get the staff on board and really just try and pump up the health and well-being side of it, not just the exercise, obviously the mental and social side of it as well.
And I'm sorry to have all these questions at the end, Sam, but it just makes me think of something. But you mentioned in your video that sort of, just that casual walking around the oval with teacher and student conversations, how that actually students really enjoyed that sort of stuff. So have you sort of noticed through term 3 and 4, that there's that rapport has really stayed on and it's been positive, for relationships or mental health for students and teachers? Has there been like a non-physical flow-on effect to that?
Yeah, I think so. I certainly learnt names of students I hadn't come across at that point in the year in different grades for various reasons. I probably didn't teach them, and so now for the remainder of the year, I've been able to walk past and say g'day and how you going. And in a time that was really challenging, and some kids just wanted to talk and just be social again and have that interaction. So I would definitely say it's carried on throughout the year, and you can still sit back and laugh and make a few jokes about some of the things that went on throughout that week, and it really gives you that rapport with the students going forward.
Yeah, and did you find, like, with those traditionally non-participants, was it that social element you mentioned that kind of got them involved, or being part of their house team, or did you sort of really try and motivate those students, in addition to what you'd done with everyone, or did they just sort of get pulled along in the ride with everyone else?
They probably just got pulled along. We didn't really change it up for them. I guess you identify the kids that you might struggle with a little bit, but as I've said, they were really amazing. They didn't go and run 10 kilometres in a health or PE lesson, but with the time frame we had in those lessons, if you walked at a reasonable pace, you could clock up minimum 3 kilometres, and they were doing that. So 3 kilometres in a health lesson for for a day, and we're running on a modified timetable at this point as well. So there was probably a bit more health and PE even than what we normally do. So it was nothing for some people to be going out running or walking 3 or 4 times in the day, and that was their day. They just went out, come back in, ate, drank water, went back out again. So we didn't really change the approach to them, but like I said, they just jumped on board. They recognised, I think, that this is the situation we're in, and the expectation was to have a go, and they really did. I couldn't recall one time where we had to follow up someone who was sort of refusing to participate or anything. So, and like I say, it wasn't just 800 metres they walked. The minimum getting done was about 3 kilometres for a double lesson.
That's great. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'll take that silence as it warms out of questions. As I said before, mate, thank you for sharing your experiences with us, because I think these kinds of things are really cool, and COVID gives some people some opportunities to try some different things. And through the sharing of experiences, we're hoping that other people can take on these kinds of ideas in their contexts and schools next year, and hopefully learn from your experiences and be able to put some stuff into place as well. And obviously, thank you for the time it took to put the presentation together, and your time this afternoon in sitting around and having a chat. Yeah, it certainly is a benefit to ACHPER Tasmania to be able to present this sort of stuff out for other HPE teachers in the state. So thank you for all the efforts that you've gone to help us out.
No worries. Yeah, really glad we can help out in any way we can to get people up and moving and living the best life they can. So thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.